It is Tuesday afternoon. Hardcore sports football fanatics. NFL Week 3 is in the books. That means it is time for your boy to give the breakdown.
Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Stees! Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps sticks real. I'm simply statue think they slate, dropping unrealistic mad, 2K takes for the click. Even though cats like that get views closer to the millie, never hear me preach LeBron to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way, sports content for the reals that fill the day.
Welcome to NFL Week 3 recap with yo boy Nicky Stees. If you're wondering why I had that be back in a moment, I had to do something real quick for the UPS for the FedEx delivery, but not that you guys really care, but let's get into it. Please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to both the Nicky Stees channel and the Hardcore Sports Network if you haven't done so. And continuing the weekly tradition, I'll put the links to both channels in the description, in the chat, and we're going to dive right into it. We're going to start off, as always, by talking about the Thursday night game, what went down this Thursday between the New York Jets and New England Patriots. The Jets dismantled the Patriots 24-3. And we went into this contest expecting a competitive game. Now, I remember with our picks, some of us were kind of split about, okay, what do we think is going to happen? I went with the Jets for my picks. Some people thought this was going to be a competitive game because the Patriots had competitive matchups weeks 1 and week 2. They beat the Bengals week 1. Had a competitive game against the now 3-0 Seahawks week 2, but then week 3, the Jets came out and dismantled the Patriots like they were nothing. Aaron Rodgers had a good performance. He had 2 touchdown passes. His touchdown completion to Garrett Wilson was the first time he completed a touchdown pass to a first-round draft pick. But it is what it is. That don't matter, though. What matters is the Jets are 2-1. And Aaron Rodgers has looked solid the last 2 games. Week 1 was kind of an up and down game, but to be fair, that was his first game back after being away for a year. And now the question is, though, with this, are the Jets playoff contenders with Rodgers and possibly AFC East division winning contenders, which they haven't done in over 2 decades? Now, we obviously at this point, we know the way things are trending. It's going to be between the Jets and the Bills for sure, especially with Tua missing time in Miami. They're 1-2. Patriots, they're in a deep rebuild. They still got a ways to go before they can get back into contention. Bills are looking like a top team, which we'll talk about later. And the Jets, last 2 weeks, they've had their two wins. They had an impressive win against a division rival in a game we thought would be competitive. Rodgers looked good. Granted, he's not the same Aaron Rodgers he was 5-6 years ago, but he's still a good quarterback. He's not washed by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he still has the veteran instincts and the QB smarts to get the job done at this level. And you saw the Jets last year, like we said, the 7-win team without him. Now this year you got him. And obviously you got a better QB situation, and you're winning games with the guy. Now, I said going into the season with Rodgers, my thing was he's in his early 40s off a major injury. I'm going to have to wait and see what he does. And so far, he's proving that he still has something left in the tank, which is impressive. So I got to give Aaron Rodgers credit where credit's due. We don't have to necessarily like the guy, but as a quarterback, hell, he's still out there doing his thing to the best of his abilities, making the Jets relevant. I got to give props to Rodgers for that. And now things are looking favorable in their way. Not only that you've won 2 games, but now you're going into a game against the Broncos next week, which you are favorite to win. And FYI, while we're still on that subject of week 4, today, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, we got NFL Pick'ems week 4, which I'll be a featured guest on. You guys can check that out, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. With that being said, things are looking great for the Jets now. At this point, you're likely to have a 3-1 start. Yet Aaron Rodgers doing his thing. The only thing when the defense is looking rock solid. This week they had a nice performance. They shut down Jacoby Brissett. They shut down that team. The only thing about the Jets that hurt their game was they gave up a few too many penalties in this matchup. But outside of that, this was a good performance by them. And I got to give props where props due. Jets are 2-1. They deserve props. And speaking of teams that are winning that deserve props, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings for a minute. Holy smokes. When it was reported that J.J. McCarthy was out for the season, we thought the Vikings were screwed. I know I'm not the only one. When I dropped that YouTube short on my channel afterward, I got comments from several people along the lines of, damn, well, that's 2 free wins for the Detroit Lions. But now, here we are, Vikings are 3-0 on top of their division. And they dismantled the Houston Texans, a contender in the AFC, by a score of 34-7. It's Sam Darnold. Where was this Sam Darnold the entire time? I mean, granted, we know where it was. He didn't have the right team around him. He didn't have the right system around him. Now that he's got good team around him in Minnesota, we saw Sam Darnold at his best. Sam Darnold having a throwback to the UFC days. I mean, that was something special there. And good for Sam Darnold. I mean, he did have 4 touchdown passes. And you even Aaron Jones, throwback to the Packers days, 102 yards on the ground. This Minnesota Vikings team's looking like a contender in the NFC. And I get him props. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, that head coach, man, he's done a hell of a job. Even the first year he came in, he led the Vikings to the number 2 seed. And even last year, even though they missed the playoffs, the losing record, he did the best he could with what he had, dealing with major injuries. And this year, without the starting quarterback, they drafted J.J. McCarthy. They're not missing a beat. And they had an emphatic win against the Texans. This was not a close, high-scoring game. The score was 34-7, folks, against the Houston Texans. And this defense, they're looking like the Purple People Eaters again. Last week, they defeated the 49ers, an injury-riddled Niners, but they did what they had to do against the Niners. One of my things about last week was I gave the Vikings credit for the win, but I did critique Sam Darnold. He did have a couple fumbles and an interception. But this week, you didn't see that from Darnold. He had his best game. And clearly by far. And this is I got to give this Vikings team credit. I mean, things are looking up in their direction. If they can keep things going, they could potentially win the NFC North. And I think now you look at it, between the Packers, who won 2 games without Jordan Love against a soft schedule, but still he won 2 games without Love. Lions are 2-1, bouncing back from that loss to Tampa Bay. I still feel they're a legit team. Vikings prove that they're legit as long as they stay healthy. Between those 3 teams, Packers, Vikings, Lions, those are going to be some interesting head-to-head matchups with those 3 teams. And don't be surprised if the schedule gets shuffled around and maybe move 1 or 2 of those games involving those 3 teams to prime time at some point. But, oh my goodness. What a game by the Minnesota Vikings. I can't stop giving them credit. Kevin O'Connell, he's done a hell of a job putting that team together. He deserves credit for it. And for the Texans, though, not to take away from the Vikings, but you do have to factor in the Texans were down without their 2 running backs, Mixon and Pierce. So that plays a factor too. The Texans, you're hoping you get those guys back. This was a disappointing game, but I don't think it's going to be that. And it's going to be a blimp under the radar in the grand scheme of things. CJ Stroud, I believe he'll bounce back, and he'll be back to doing his thing for the Texans. So I don't think it's the end for the Texans. Just a temporary setback. Regular season losses happen. Even the best of teams have their bad games. So I don't think it's the end for the Texans. They'll bounce back. And the Vikings, things are looking up for them. That's going to be a fun NFC North to watch, like I said. But now moving on. This is a tough one, man, for the Chargers. Man, what is it with the Chargers, man? It seems like their team is cursed. I mean, you have a situation where you come in, you get Jim Harbaugh out of Michigan, who had success in the NFL before. You start off 2-0, now you're 2-1. Okay, you lost the Steelers, who are a good team, granted. It happens, but you read by the banner, they had injuries dealing with Justin Herbert and the offensive line. Herbert had the high ankle sprain, which is only a small injury, but this is 1 year removed from him season ending early. That's a bad sign for the Chargers that you got your star quarterback injured in week 3, one season after a season-ending injury. Even though it's only a minor injury compared to what happened last year, that's not looking good. And you have Slater in 8. Those guys are out from the offensive line. You got Rashawn Slater, your main guys on the offensive line's questionable. Herbert questionable. You got Joey Bosa, your veteran leaders on the defense, questionable. If some of these guys miss time, you're going to see an even more run-heavy attack from the Chargers with a head coach who loves to run the ball. But the fact that you got some of these injuries early in the season, I mean, you're hoping they're just minor. You're hoping it's only temporary. These guys come back. They're fully healthy. You can still win games, make a push for the playoffs. But the thing is, now you're going into week 4 against the defending Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs, who've had your number. And you're possibly running the risk of having at most 4 of your main guys out, 2 offensive linemen, your quarterback and leader on your defense. At minimum scenario, possibly 1 or 2 of those guys out. That's not looking good right now early in the week. But remember, it is Tuesday. We don't know the injury report yet, but on paper, things are not looking good for the Chargers headed into their week 4 matchup, 1 week after an embarrassing loss to the Steelers. Now, on the other hand, though, I got to give the Steelers credit. They're finding ways to win games. And Justin Fields, he's had some moments where he's actually looked like a decent quarterback. Now, do I think he's the long-term answer for Pittsburgh? No. I don't see Justin Fields as that franchise guy. While he has played better with better structure around him, I just don't see Justin Fields as that future face of the franchise guy. I think he's one of those QBs that, from what I've seen so far, he's in the right situation. He's a game manager. But that's what I feel Justin Fields' ceiling is as a quarterback. But at the same time, hey, good for him that he found a better situation. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Greg John, one of my football live stream fanatics coming through. Hope you're having a great day. And thanks for stopping by as always. Always appreciate the support. So, at the same time, though, even though the main focus is going to be about the Chargers' injuries, the Steelers deserve credit, too. Can't take away credit from them. Like I said, it's good for Justin Fields that he's in a better situation than he was with the Bears. But at the same time, I don't see him as the long-term answer. And we do know that there is an injury history, too. So there is always the risk that he could get injured and it could get turned back to rust as the season goes along. I mean, you're obviously hope that wouldn't happen, but realistically, that is a possibility. But it is good for Justin Fields. He's in a better situation. He at least has a shot of being more than a bust. And that's good, awesome for the young man there. And yep, Jaden Daniels, that's one did. Yep, I'm definitely going to talk about him later. He deserves praise too. And for Fields, oh man. But yeah, I don't see him as the long-term guy. And while we're still on the subject with quarterbacks, we're going to keep this thing rolling with the next subject about the Carolina Panthers. They managed to beat the Raiders with Andy Dalton. Now, with Andy Dalton, you're dealing with this quarterback with who's a veteran who knows the ins and outs of the game. He'll at least make the Panthers competitive, and he did that against the Raiders. So the Panthers do manage to get a win. Their offense actually looked in sync. Andy Dalton actually gave us some flashbacks to his Pro Bowl days with the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's good for him, good for the Panthers, but this doesn't do anything for them in the long term. Now, it doesn't make up for the fact that you went all in for the wrong quarterback. You gave up future draft picks. You drafted Bryce Young, who's a bust. You realized early in his second season, oh shit, we picked the wrong guy. You benched him. And Andy Dalton, he'll at least make you competitive. But even then, this team's not winning the division with Andy Dalton as their starting quarterback. And they're not going to make any big playoff runs with him or do any of that with him as their starting quarterback. They'll be more competitive, but you're not going to win a whole bunch of games and make a Super Bowl run out of nowhere. That's not happening with Andy Dalton. So it is good for the Panthers that they got a win. It doesn't do anything to fix that long-term situation. You still got David Tepper, who's a horrible owner. You're still a cluster as an organization. You can't keep a coach consistently. This doesn't change all those factors. While it's nice for them, they finally got a win. It's nice for Andy Dalton, he got some shine. It's not going to solve the long-term woes. Now, speaking of long-term woes, let's talk about their opponent, the Raiders. For the Raiders, it all started with that decision to hire Josh McSnakeoil as the head coach back in the 2022 offseason, instead of promoting their, at the time, interim coach, Rich Bisaccia, to the full-time head coaching role. If they would have just made the decision to go with Bisaccia, they probably would have had a better 2022 season. Would they have made the playoffs? I don't know about that, but they would have done better under him than they would have Josh McSnakeoil. Probably Derek Carr would still be there as your starting quarterback, and that would have fixed their quarterback situation, but that didn't happen. And they were stuck with Gardner Minshew, who was horrible in this game. Take a look. Gardner Minshew had a 42.2 QBR against the Panthers of all teams, who looked like the worst team in the NFL 2 weeks through the regular season. And then they had to put in Aiden O'Connell, who had a good QBR for the time he played, but that was in garbage time. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't say anything about Aiden O'Connell being the starting quarterback going forward. And that's the problem with the Raiders this offseason. They should have traded up to get a quarterback in the draft. They should have traded up probably 2 or 3 spots to get somebody. Even if it was Bo Nix, they should have at least gotten a quarterback. But they didn't. And they stuck with Gardner Minshew, who's kind of like a poor man's Ryan Fitzpatrick, who might play good at times, but you know he's not going to consistently do good enough to be the long-term answer for any team. And now you see it. He's flopping around from team to team. Maybe he'll start sometimes. Usually he'll be a backup similar to Ryan Fitzpatrick. And that's where we get. And that's why I see it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick-ish all over again with Gardner Minshew. And the Raiders ultimately can blame themselves for Ryan to roll the dice with Minshew. So it's like, yeah, even though Antonio Pierce is a likable personality, that ain't going to fix your QB situation. And now switching gears to a team dealing with a situation, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, man. This is looking to me like 2020 Niners all over again. You guys remember the COVID year? Niners were, ironically, off a Super Bowl loss to Kansas City, and they ended up dealing with a bunch of injuries to all their main guys. They went 6-10 without them, and now they fall to 1-2 without their key starters. They blew a lead against the Rams. I mean, it was a close competitive game. I give the Niners credit. They're doing their best they can with what they have. No Kittle, no Debo, no McCaffrey. You're going out there giving it your all. You're busting your ass. I respect that from them. However, it's not helping you win games. The Niners need these guys back. And it's obvious the way they've played these last 2 weeks. They put up their best effort, but they lost both times. At the end of the day, you don't get credit for a good effort. You get credit for wins. And the Niners have lost 2 straight games without their starters. I mean, and you are dealing with 2 curses, the Super Bowl losers curse and the Madden curse with McCaffrey, but still, man, you've lost 2 games. I mean, and the 2 main things that made the difference in this game were the missed field goal that would have made it 27-27 in a tie and the fumble in the second quarter. Those 2 right there play a factor in the outcome of this game. So even though they did their best, it's those little mistakes that come back to bite them in the end. For the Niners, you need your guys healthy. You need McCaffrey back. You need Debo back. You need Kittle back. You're not going to win anything big without those guys, and we've seen it. We know historically from past seasons, the Niners, when their team falls apart due to injuries, they're not the same team. We saw it in 2020 with COVID. We saw it in 2018. Remember that with Jimmy G, the first year under his contract? He got hurt. Remember Sherman got hurt? A lot of those other guys got hurt. They ended up going 4-12. History shows us that the Niners, when they get the bad luck of injuries, they don't do as well. So, man, they need some luck getting their guys back. They do play the Patriots, but who knows at this point? If they're missing some of their main guys, you never know. That could be a toss-up. I mean, that's all there is to say about them. It's just rotten luck for the Niners. And now we're going to switch gears over a little bit. You got the Baltimore Ravens. Had an interesting game against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they did win 28-25. They got that much-needed win after an 0-2 start. However, as the headline on the banner says, Ravens escaped Dallas with a 28-25 win after 28-6 lead. So even though they won, they nearly blew it again. You were up 28-26. You were 28-6. You were in control of the game. The Cowboys started making their comeback in the fourth quarter, and before you know it, it was a game. I wasn't really watching the game, but I'm looking up at it. I'm seeing the Ravens kicking the Cowboys' ass. I'm like, how about them Cowboys? I was enjoying it. I was happy about it. Eagles had already won. Ravens were in cruise control. But then as I kept glancing back at the game, glancing back at the score, I saw slowly but surely Cowboys were inching in. And it was getting closer and closer. And before you know it, it's 28-25 with a few minutes left. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, I swear if the Ravens lose this game, I was really going to drop a YouTube short on their ass if they lost. I would have done that. I didn't drop a short about the game, but trust me, I would have dropped the short. Roasting the Ravens had they blown that game. But they got lucky they didn't. But that's a problem the Ravens have had now for a couple of years. When they go up big, they let their foot off the gas pedal. Remember, most notably, they did it 2 seasons ago against the Giants during Brian DeBall's first year. They did it last week against the Raiders in a game they should have won, that most people picked them as the favorites to win. And then, guess what, folks? They did it again last week. They did it again this week, almost. The Ravens have to learn to close games. But to their credit, though, I'm not going to completely roast them because they still did win. They did what they needed to. They get credit. They let Derrick Henry run the ball 25 times, and he had over 100 yards, including a long 29-yard run. Derrick Henry was looking like King Henry a bit from the Titans. So the Ravens put more faith in Derrick Henry. They did that right, and they scored enough points to win this game. But it's okay. Good job there for the Ravens, but they got to be better at closing games. They have to. And Dak looked poor throughout this game. Now, don't let the stats at the end fool you. Some of those points in garbage time. Sure, Dak did stat pad with 2 touchdowns in garbage time, but he had a pretty shitty QBR. Let's take a look real quick. Where are we at? With Dak had a 52.6 QBR. So don't let the stats fool you, folks. This was not a good game for the Cowboys. Just because they scored some points in the fourth quarter and made it look closer and more competitive does not mean it was a good team effort. And like I said, Dak had a little above 50 QBR. Where was Dak in the first half, huh? Just because he didn't throw any interceptions doesn't mean he had a good performance. What did he do in the first half to help this team? He didn't do anything. He stat padded at the end. But guess what? If Dak would have played that good throughout the game, if you even play even halfway as good as he did in the fourth quarter in the first half, the Cowboys win that game. As they would have scored more points in the first half, and they would have been able to successfully pull off a comeback and win that game. So yes, we can certainly criticize Dak's performance in the first 3 quarters. for that right there. You play better and help your team get more points. Guess what? You're winning. You're winning that game. But you didn't do that. So some of the blame has got to be thrown on Dak. And things are not looking good now for the Cowboys. And now what do the Cowboys have? The Giants on the schedule next? Is it? Let's take a look. We're going to go right now, look at the week 4 game schedule, and we're going to see who they got. So, yeah, week 4, they got the Giants on Thursday night at MetLife Stadium. Yeah, I mean, that probably should win that game, but even if you do, you're at 500 with a lot of question marks. And if you lose, well, yeah, it's pretty much a wrap for your season. But congrats to the Ravens. You got the win, but you got to play better at the end. Of the Cowboys, it's not looking good. But now, as far as the NFC East goes, it is looking good for another team in that division now, who did win and bounced up to 2-1. And the Washington Commanders shined with Jayden Daniels on Monday Night Football. And they got the upset win over the Cincinnati Bengals to move their way up to 2-1. Remember, going into the season, some people felt like this Washington team, if Jayden Daniels shined, could at least make the playoffs. And so far, you're seeing that. He looked good in this game. Jayden Daniels, I mean, we saw the first couple weeks, he had his moments where he looked good, but week 1, okay, he didn't do anything great, but he didn't look horrible. He had some decent plays. Week 2 last week, even though they didn't get any touchdowns, you saw some good with Jayden Daniels. Now, week 3, he puts up a good statistical performance and throws a few touchdown passes. You see, slowly but surely, he showed some good promise. And then week 3, you see him deliver on the promise and help the Commanders get a win, and a big win on prime time. So the way Jayden Daniels is playing now, you saw the chemistry with Terry McLaurin, even Zach Ertz. Looks like the way things are going. This team looks like a wild card team. They'll at least make the playoffs and play in a playoff game if they stay healthy and things go as well as they are so far. Because you got 2 wins, things are at least looking good. There's plenty of room for Daniels to continue and improve with more experience as the season goes along. And you could be talking about a Commanders team that could be hot going around Thanksgiving into Christmas, and that could be enough for this team to make the playoffs. Now, win the division? I don't know about that, but hey, you never know. Sometimes the unexpected happens. But hey, congrats to the Commanders on that win. Good for their fans. I see why you guys were excited about Jayden Daniels, and it looks like things are finally moving in an upward direction for them. But now we got to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. You're 0-3 now in a tough AFC. Things are not looking up. They had a poor offseason, and they don't have the same swagger and mojo they've had in recent years. I mean, you've lost to the Patriots, who are 1-2 in a rebuild, and you lost to the Commanders, who I do think could be a playoff team, as I just said, but that's 2 games you were favored to win, you lost. And against Kansas City, you put up a good effort, but you ultimately lost. And this is not looking good for the Cincinnati Bengals this season. Do I think they'll find a way to win some games as the year goes along? Yes, absolutely. But the way things are looking, I could probably see 7-8 wins at best the way they're going right now. I don't see this team really making the playoffs, especially with the Steelers looking good the way they are. You got the Bills are shining. The Jets look like they could be a playoff contender as well. And then you also look around the rest of the AFC. Of course, you got the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Ravens are, I don't know. I mean, the Ravens, Bengals, even the Ravens look better than the Bengals right now. I don't think this is looking good for the Bengals in terms of their playoff odds. I just don't see it. I mean, maybe there's a chance you sneak in as the 7th seed when you got teams like the Raiders around. Now, maybe the Chargers, as the season goes along, they're healthy. They could do something. And so far, you got Jayden Daniels was the best QB in the draft. Absolutely. Yeah, so far, you've seen through 3 weeks, you followed all the rookie quarterbacks. It's obviously Jayden Daniels is the best QB by far. And we saw last night, he carved up that Cincinnati Bengals defense and had his first excellent game. And yeah, Arku longtime supporter of Hardcore Sports Network content creators on the channel, said Greg John, he could be CJ Stroud. And there's a good possibility of that. He's taken over a team that's been a dumpster fire. And, that when you needed a quarterback, and so far he's got them at 2-1. And there's only room for him to get better as the season goes along. This could very well be a CJ Stroud situation. Absolutely. Hey, as long as Jaden Daniels stays healthy and avoids a major injury like RG3, things could be finally looking up for the Commanders in their long-term future. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, things are not looking this great this season. I mean, at best, you're talking maybe the 7th seed at best, the way things are looking at an 0-3 start. But you still got to factor in the Chargers. Even with their early injuries, if they're healthy enough come the right time, Chargers could beat them out for a playoff spot. I mean, it's not looking good for the Bengals in the AFC. Now, moving on, let's see. Vikings could be a surprise contender. Yep, that NFC right there. That NFC North is an interesting division now. With the Vikings, Lions, and Packers, those 3 teams, those are going to be some good games when any combination of those 3 teams match up head-to-head. I wouldn't even be surprised if some of those games scheduled for 1 or 4 slot get moved to a primetime slot as we get closer to it. That being either a Vikings-Packers, a Packers-Lions, or a Vikings-Lions game that was scheduled for an afternoon or evening could get moved to a primetime spot, possibly. Because those 3 teams, it's looking interesting in the NFC North, especially with the Vikings playing some of the best football in the NFL through 3 weeks. And speaking of best football through 3 weeks, you also got to talk about the Buffalo Bills, man. How about that? 3-0. Josh Allen's out there proving all the critics wrong that said this team was going to take a step back. They're 3-0. They're still leading the AFC East. And now, as soon as New England stepped down with Brady, all of a sudden Buffalo took hold of that division. Now they got the stranglehold on the AFC East that the Patriots had, minus the Super Bowl wins. But Josh Allen's proven that he is the franchise quarterback. Only thing missing from his resume is the Super Bowl win or Super Bowl appearance. But there is still time for that. But I got to give the Buffalo Bills credit. Hey, they're winning games without any real star receivers. But at the same time, you got to factor in this was against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence, I don't even know what to say about Trevor Lawrence. I don't. That comment right there from Arku, best way to put it, Trevor Lawrence is terrible. And there's a lot of different adjectives you can come up with, but we'll stick with Arku's of him being terrible. He is. You saw last week against the Browns, he didn't do anything significant. And now this week, what's he really done? What did he do this week? He didn't do anything significant all this week. He did horrible. That whole team. What the fuck is it with the Jaguars? This is a throwback for Trevor Lawrence to his rookie year under Urban Meyer. And he's got Doug Peterson, who, despite his flaws, is still a better coach than Urban Meyer. By God. And Trevor Lawrence is back to rookie form. I mean, it's obvious this guy is not the long-term answer. He's not. I mean, what the hell is that right there on Monday Night Football? The Jags looked absolutely abysmal. They couldn't keep the Bills off the field. I mean, they couldn't even keep them off the field. I mean, the Jaguars were just getting steamrolled, absolutely steamrolled all game long by them. It's just absolutely atrocious performance there. What the hell? I mean, at this point, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of him, even despite the Super Bowl win. Now, Nick Sirianni, I am not too. I don't think he's the best coach either, but I'll talk more about him tomorrow when I do my Eagles Saints recap at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you said, yep, I just pretty much said it. Yeah, Cowboys are not looking good at all. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, yeah, it's clearly obviously looks like a bust. Because you look at his body of work so far. He had a bad rookie season, but he got some benefit of the doubt because he was pretty much shackled by Urban Meyer. Then year 2, he looked awful early in the season. But as the season went along, the Jags started to go on a little bit of a magical run. And they made the playoffs. And that playoff win they had against the Chargers at home, They did pull off a nice second half comeback, but remember, Trevor Lawrence looked back in rookie form in the first half of that playoff win 2 seasons ago. And they managed to escape with the win there. But then last year, Lawrence, he was an up and down season. And so far this year, it's obvious he's not the answer long-term at quarterback. Right? This is season 4. Had a good second half of the season on a magical run, year 2. Now year 4, he looks like he's reverting back to rookie form. It's obvious to me Trevor Lawrence is not the long-term answer here. He's one of the most overhyped. He's the most overhyped QB of recent memory. And that's the main takeaway for the Jags there. And don't be surprised if Doug Peterson's on the hot seat this season. Jags are off to an 0-3 start. You blew against Miami Dolphins, who are an underachieving team. Then you lost to the Browns, who were down their quarterback. And you got blown out by the best team you played thus far in the Buffalo Bills. I mean, it's pretty much safe to say Jags aren't going to go anywhere this year. Even though it is early, what have they proven? And now we're going to close this off. We're going to do a brief 2-minute recap. Starting right now. So for this week, also interesting note, the Browns lose to the Giants 21-15. The Giants did just enough to escape with the win, and the Browns, oh boy, if you have a better quarterback at all, if you just have a better quarterback, you're winning that game. It's obvious they went all in for the wrong quarterback, and they're stuck with Deshaun Watson. Big mistake by the Browns there, and we see it again against the Giants. And hey, the Lions, nice job on the Lions bouncing back with a win after a loss to Tampa Bay. I said they'd bounce back. They did what they needed to do. Detroit Lions are now up to 2-1. They beat the Arizona Cardinals, and we're like, hey, it was just one game against Tampa. It's over with. We're 2-1. We're looking strong again. So good for the Detroit Lions for bouncing back. And prove me correct. And then you got the Kansas City Chiefs. Hey, they find ways to keep winning games. And that's what you got to do. Yeah, you're the Super Bowl champs. You're 3-0. You found a way to win. I mean, the Falcons, to their credit, made it competitive, but they're not the same level as team as Kansas City. They don't pay you to be competitive. They pay you to win games, and the Falcons didn't do that. Kansas City, 3-0. You love them or hate them, you got to give them props, and you got to respect them. Sending Super Bowl champs, get it done again. And then you also have the man. Plus Tampa Bay, what happened with them? Bo Nix looked like a solid quarterback for a week. The Broncos get the win. Now, what's going on going to happen from here? Is Tampa Bay going to bounce back? Are they going to take a step down? Are the Broncos going to play better? It'll be interesting for me to see where both teams go from there. But as of right now, that's the deal. And hey, shout out to the Seahawks, 3-0. Soft schedule or not, hey, 3-0 and on top of your division. Good momentum center for the Seahawks. All right, there's our 2-minute recap, folks. So with that being said, it's at that point of the show where time to wrap things up. And as always, thanks to everyone that showed up. Greg and John, Arku, thanks for your support. As always, you guys are the reason I keep doing this stream. You're the reason I'm able to have a platform here, keep my channel rolling, keep producing content. You guys make this thing fun. So as always, shout out to you guys, the supporters of my content. I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoyed this stream. And I hope you enjoy everything I do. And with that being said, for the Hardcore Sports Network fans, I'll be back 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as a guest on the Hardcore Sports Network exclusive NFL Pick'ems Week 4. So if you got time to tune into that. You get to hear me. I'll be joined with some of my special guests. I'll be joined some of my guests for this one. Give me one moment, folks. Just make sure I got the list for you. I'll be there. It'll be me, Big Simple, Football Talk with Bo, and Mitch Koski. We'll all be sitting around giving our early Week 4 picks. Now, the reason we're doing it today is because Big Simple's the host, and this is the only time of the week he could do it. So, yep, but make sure you tune in 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, again, thanks to everyone that watched the stream. I hope you enjoyed. For the Eagles fans, if you're looking for my thoughts on the Eagles Saints, catch me tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll recap the Eagles Saints game. So catch me then. And as always, to everyone, and you can't stop saying this enough, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. if I don't see you today, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that being said, until next time, Nicky Stees signing off.